Hello everyone, and welcome to the next in the series of 13 reasons why students underperform. They're often distracted by their dogs, who are very cute. That's going to be the topic today. But no, in fact it's not. Today I'm going to be talking about what I call the myth of mathematics. Okay, take 2 or 3 or 4, or whatever the case might be. Unfortunately, the dogs ruined things several times. They got into a fight. It was very adorable, but it wasn't good from an audio perspective. So, welcome to today's continuation in the series 13 Reasons Why Students Underperform. And the one that we're going to be talking about today, I'm simply captioning the myth of mathematics. Now, it applies to more than only mathematics. It applies also to science, including both chemistry and physics and IT, accounting, any of the quote-unquote application subjects. But mathematics is the subject to which this applies most strongly. Now, in my experience, having taught all over the world, from the United Kingdom to the United States of America to Zimbabwe, to Botswana, to Brazil, to Swaziland, to Switzerland, I have found consistently that mathematics is the worst learnt and worst taught subject because of 2 myths which are promulgated about it. Here they are. The first one: you can't learn maths. You must just understand it. Maths is not a learning subject. Maths is an understanding subject. And the second myth: practice makes perfect. So please go home and do questions 2, 3, 4, 7, 11, 19, 22, 26, and eventually you'll know what's going on. So the 2 myths: you can't learn maths, you must just understand it, and the second, practice makes perfect, are myths for a couple of reasons. Now, firstly, I want to concede that there are grains of truth to both of them, but unfortunately they mess students up in a variety of ways. Let's go with the idea of you must just understand maths and that it's not a learning subject. Well, for all of those mathematical genii out there, here's an equation. And by the way, before you think, oh no, that's absolute nonsense, that's not an equation, it is actually an equation, I assure you. So now you can hopefully see it clearly. I would like you to solve that equation. There we go, nice and easy. And of course, even Albert Einstein would say, "My God, I do not understand this equation." And I would say, "But hang on, Einstein, aren't you quite bright? Why don't you understand the equation?" And of course, his answer would be, "Because I have not learned what the symbols mean. My lack of understanding is because of my lack of learning." You see, an absolute elementary part of education is that until we've learned something, we don't know that thing. And until we know something adequately, we cannot understand it adequately. And before we've understood it adequately, we cannot apply it. So, of course, mathematics is a learning subject. It's just a different kind of learning subject. Now, this first myth bleeds into the second myth of practice makes perfect, because the snag is a student being told that you must just understand maths, and also that practice is the way forward, usually will suddenly encounter a lack of understanding and try and deal with it by practice, practice, practice. And let's logically think about it. Practice makes perfect if you have some inkling of what you're doing. But if you don't, it's just a disaster. So imagine if I practice on a bicycle. Yes, I'll probably get toned and I'll lose weight, but not if the bicycle's wheel is bent. All that'll happen is I'm going to semicircle concuss myself, semicircle concuss myself. Clearly, I've got to make sure the apparatus is right before I begin the practice. So with mathematics, without going into too much depth, the concept is this: you need to understand your theory and the logic as well as possible before you begin practicing it. Now, of course, the practice is going to consolidate that. It may lead to greater understanding. But if you or your child is launching into the subject and they're doing that before they have even elementary understanding of the theory, which, by the way, is inevitably explained in the first few pages of the chapter, those pages that students say, "Oh, yay, let's get to the examples quickly," and just concuss themselves constantly. If a student starts practicing without that understanding, of course, things are going to go badly. Now, the other thing, of course, is it gets worse year for year. If you're missing something in year 8, that lack of knowledge is going to mean that you're going to not understand other things that happen in year 9. And then year 10 is going to be even worse, and the problem becomes exponential. If you don't know what that means, you're missing one of those foundational bricks from the earlier years. So the idea is you need to fix your knowledge so that you're able to understand and then apply. Now, without making this video horribly long, I'm going to do 2 things. Number 1, I'm going to tell you something great, which is that a product that we're working on at the moment, we help people with all subjects like maths and science and so on, but we're actually working on a product called Maths Cheetah, which is literally systematically going to go through the entire syllabus from the early grades in high school all the way to the end of high school, using memory techniques so that students can actually remember the theory and the steps and the rules and the procedures perfectly. A bit like a computer. You program a computer to do mathematics and it gets the answer right, not because it's a genius, but because it's able to store the data and the rules and the procedures so that it can execute the function properly. So Maths Cheetah is going to do precisely that. Then the other thing which I would like to say to you today is that it's essential that you have all of those things in rigorous place so that you can perform well. And I know this from the experience that I've had with students. There are a couple which I can bring up, but I'm going to bring up an example which is the most striking of any student I've ever taught. Throughout high school, this child went to extra mathematics and they did more sums, more. In fact, before high school, from about the age of 10, he was going to extra mathematics every single week, dutifully, and at the end of high school, he almost failed. He just scraped a pass, but by only 2%. The same person, years later, was needing to write an exam to get into some of the prestigious universities in America, and this exam had a mathematics component far harder than anything that he'd have to do in high school. And so, of course, he'd say, but Paul, I'm clearly going to fail this. I'm just not mathematical. Look at all those extra maths lessons, which led to almost nothing. And here I am with only 3 weeks to prepare. And I said, no, here is the way that you should approach it. Go and do the following things, and I bet you're going to do better. And to cut a long story short, competing against students from elite institutions around the world, he wound up in the 97th percentile of all people writing that exam. Only 3 weeks preparation, and he hasn't done any mathematics in all those years. So that's how deeply I believe and have experienced the idea that if you can have your theory perfectly in place, it facilitates your understanding of what's going on so that practice suddenly can make perfect, and far less practice, in fact, can often yield results. So those are the 2 myths of mathematics, and the takeaway lesson for your students is all subjects are learning subjects. You just have to work out what way you should be learning the subject in order to succeed. Thank you, everyone. Happy learning.